Chapter 6048. Faced with the curious questions from the people behind Zhao Jian, the cultivators in the sacred assembly remained silent. Now that the dark sacred assembly was about to be established, they did not want to complicate matters before that. Back then, when Zhao Jian chose to leave, it proved that they had chosen another path. If they were to reveal this matter now, they would not be able to accept it if something went wrong and affected the young lord. "We've just been cultivating," Mu Yangshi said slowly. "We've been cultivating too, but your aura is much stronger than ours now. Could it be that you found the cultivation method of the dark attribute? Or did young Lord D tell you the method that he knows?" Zhao Jian pretended to be innocent and asked his doubts. He felt that a brand new path had appeared in front of him. No matter what, he had to get to the bottom of this matter today. Back then, most of the people here could not be compared to him. However, in just a year's time, these people's cultivation had surpassed his. How could he accept this? It was too late to regret what had happened in the past. The most important thing for him now was to find a way to increase his strength. Obviously, even if it was Huang Futing, it was impossible for him to find the cultivation method. The only possibility was Bewitching. This was because among the known dark attribute cultivators, Bewitching was undoubtedly the most outstanding one. He did not seem to be affected at all, and his cultivation had never fallen behind. Previously, we went to the ancient battlefield to train and obtain some opportunities there. That's why everyone's strength has increased, Mu Yangshi answered, avoiding the main point and dwelling on the trivial. Seeing that Mu Yangshi did not seem to want to talk to him, Zhao Jian was annoyed. "So you went to the ancient battlefield. That's amazing." Zhao Jian thought for a moment and said directly, "Mu Yangshi, I'd like to meet young Lord D. Can you introduce me?" Hearing that, Mu Yangshi frowned. "Zhao Jian, have you forgotten how you spoke to young Lord back then?" He remembered clearly that Zhao Jian was not polite at all back then. He even said that everything that Bewitching did was a lie. The situation back then was very ugly. If it was not for Huang Futing who stabilized the situation, they might not be where they were today. Back then, Zhao Jian didn't hold back at all when he left. Does he want to come back? How can there be such a cheap thing? He had always been conceited and arrogant, thinking that he was great. In my opinion, he must be regretting it now. If he hadn't gone against big brother Huangfu, he wouldn't have fallen to such a state now. Zhao Jian's face gradually turned ugly as he listened to everyone's discussion. Indeed, he regretted his actions back then. Now that the D family's reputation had soared, it seemed that Ozhou was about to surpass the other families. Although he didn't understand why Bewitching wanted to help them, since he had done so, those who followed him were blessed. "I know that I was wrong in the past. Considering our past relationship, can you introduce me to him?" Zhao Jian lowered his voice. Even if he was faced with everyone's questioning and mocking gazes, he didn't care. Chapter 6049. Looking at Zhao Jian's humble appearance, a trace of hesitation flashed in Mu Yangshi's eyes. The current Zhao Jian was obviously very different from before. In fact, even he couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. If Zhao Jian hadn't been so impulsive back then, he should be very strong now. He would become the person second only to Huang Futing in the Dark Sacred Assembly. Mu Yangshi's second-in-command position would also belong to him. Should he agree or not? The young master was already very busy. In order to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, he had already spent a lot of effort. He didn't know if the young master would be willing to see Zhao Jian again. If this would make the young master feel troubled, then he would rather not agree. "Mu Yangshi, it's just a referral. Aren't you too stingy if you're not willing?" "Yeah, our friendship back then was pretty good. Now that you're doing well, you're ignoring us. Isn't that too realistic? Are you looking down on us because you're doing well?" The cultivators behind Zhao Jian were all dissatisfied. Right now, they were envious of Mu Yangshi and the others from the bottom of their hearts. If they could also obtain a way to increase their strength, if they had such strong strength now, then their lives wouldn't be so difficult. There was a kind of loss. People like them had unknowingly been freed from their predicament, but they were still here and hadn't changed. That's not what we meant. Then what do you mean? Zhao Jian's face also became gloomy. He had already lowered himself to this extent, But Mu Yangshi still didn't relent. The anger in his heart had long been uncontrollable. If you're not willing to help, then I'll find a way myself. Mu Yangshi, what happened? When Di Beichen and the others returned to the dark sacred assembly from the restaurant, they saw an extremely lively scene in front of them. From afar, they could only see a group of cultivators gathered outside the gate of the sacred assembly. This situation made them very puzzled. Now wasn't the time for the news to spread. Usually, everyone would stay in the sacred assembly and rarely come out. At this moment, everyone was gathered outside the door. It was a huge commotion, and it was easy to attract the attention of others. The sudden voice immediately attracted everyone's attention. Mu Yangshi and the others all looked at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang respectfully and bowed. Young master, madam. Di Beichen and the others hastened their footsteps. Huang Futing, who originally thought that someone was looking for trouble, had a complicated expression when he saw Zhao Jian and the other familiar figures. Zhao Jian, what are you doing here? When he saw Huang Futing again, Zhao Jian's expression changed slightly. His malicious eyes were filled with resentment. If it wasn't for Huang Futing, he might not have made such an impulsive decision back then. It's none of your business. Zhao Jian glanced coldly at Huang Futing before turning his gaze to Di Beichen. His expression became warm and ingratiating. Young Lord Di, long time no see. Looking at the person in front of him, Di Beichen frowned slightly and said to Huang Futing, "Who is he?" Zhao Jian's face instantly flushed red. He heard Huang Futing say, "He's Zhao Jian." Zhao Jian? Huang Futing nodded. He's the one who questioned you and Madam back then, and left with his men. Chapter 60-50. The calm words that came out of Di Beichen's mouth instantly became extremely lethal. Zhao Jian's face was still maintaining that fawning smile, but gradually, that smile could no longer be maintained. Contempt. This was utter contempt. Master. The male master really doesn't have any impression of unimportant people. Xiao He could not help but say. This was too much of a slap in the face. Zhao Jian appeared here at this moment. Even if he didn't say his motive, it could be seen from his expression that he regretted his original decision. So now he wanted to please Di Beichen and rejoin the team. However, a few simple words from Di Beichen directly blocked the other party's path. Hearing Xiao He's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. This little fellow's skills were still too shallow. According to her understanding of Di Beichen, he would definitely not forget Zhao Jian. He must have said that on purpose. She still remembered clearly that when Zhao Jian and the rest left, Di Beichen was worried that Zhao Jian and the rest would cause trouble and hence, he paid attention to them for a period of time. However, after everyone went to the ancient battlefield, no one paid attention to this anymore. This was because this fellow had disappeared for a long time. After not seeing him for such a long time, who knew when he would fall? Who would have thought that just when everyone had almost forgotten about him, this fellow would suddenly appear again? Huang Futing noticed that Zhao Jian's expression was getting uglier, and felt that it was very interesting. He also did not believe that the young master's memory would be so bad. This was because during the time he spent with the young master, he was very clear about the young master's photographic memory. Although Zhao Jian was nothing in the young master's heart, the incident back then was not a small matter. The young master could not possibly forget. He said that on purpose to tease Zhao Jian. Young Master Di, I'm here today because I have something to say to you. Although Zhao Jian felt that he had lost face, Di Beichen was his only hope right now. If he missed this opportunity, he would not have the chance to rise again in the future. Hence, no matter what, he could not let go of this opportunity. Say it, Di Beichen said. Here. Zhao Jian was stunned. His words were not suitable for everyone to hear. What's the problem? Di Beichen asked. Looking at Di Beichen's matter-of-fact expression, Zhao Jian only felt that it was not right to say it, but it was also not right to not say it. If he said these words in front of so many people, wouldn't he become a joke in the eyes of everyone in the future? Young Master Di, may I have a word with you? Zhao Jian lowered his voice and looked awkward. If you want to say it, then say it. I still have things to do. Di Beichen turned around. His clear and handsome face revealed an indifference that kept people at a distance of 1,000 miles. making him appear even more noble and threatening. Seeing that Bewitching did not hesitate to walk into the Holy Light Assembly, Zhao Jian could not help but feel anxious. He understood that what he had done in the past had indeed offended Bewitching. Now it was reasonable for Bewitching to take him down a notch. Young Master D, it was indeed my fault in the past. I hope that you can forgive me and give me a chance. At the same time, the group of cultivators behind Zhao Jian agreed. Young Master D, it was our fault in the past. Please forgive us. We swear to be loyal to you in the future. We will never betray you. Chapter 60-51. Please enter the text. Please note, according to the relevant laws and regulations of the country, please do not upload any pornographic, vulgar, political, or other illegal content. We will review and handle it according to the laws and regulations and report it. Hearing Zhao Jian's words, no one present was surprised at all. Wasn't the reason why he appeared here now so that he could join them again? When the Dark Sacred Assembly is established in the future, you can register as a member. Bewitching's expression was calm, and the coldness in his eyes never dissipated. The Dark Sacred Assembly was the gathering place for all dark attribute cultivators. Just like how every attribute cultivator would become a member of a corresponding attribute guild. Zhao Jian and the others were dark attribute, so it was reasonable for them to become members of the Dark Sacred Assembly. However, these people present were the backbone of the Dark Sacred Assembly. In the future, the Dark Sacred Assembly would spread throughout the entire upper realm, and many branch presidents and deacons would be selected from these people. This was because they were elders of the Light Sacred Assembly. After experiencing so many things, coupled with the contract they had signed, these people were trustworthy enough. These elders and members like Zhao Jian were two completely different situations. Are you really going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly? Zhao Jian was slightly stunned. Although this idea had appeared in his mind long ago, when Bewitching really mentioned it, he could not help but be shocked. The Dark Sacred Assembly was the dream of many of them. Usually, when they were daydreaming, they could not help but imagine the appearance of this day. However, now that someone was really planning to do it, how shocking was this? No one can say when it will be established in the future, Huang Futing said. Huang Futing said, if you can really wait until that day comes, then you can become a member. After Zhao Jian came back to his senses, he heard Huang Futing's words and could not help but ask, then why are all of you together now? Can't we join too? Even if he did not know what Bewitching and the others were planning, he knew that Huang Futing and the others had benefited a lot from Bewitching. If they could join now, they could improve their current lives even faster. In the past year, they had been very poor, and it was difficult to even find a stable place. No, Bewitching left a cold sentence and walked directly into the Dark Sacred Assembly. Everyone had their own choices. If they made the wrong choice, they would have to pay the price. He had chosen all the paths himself, and he should bear the consequences of his actions. No. These two words were like a bucket of cold water that was poured over Zhao Jian's head. Even the cultivators behind him felt a chill run down their spines. Young Master D. Zhao Jian was still unwilling to give up, but Bewitching did not give him a chance to continue speaking. He walked straight into the Sacred Assembly. Seeing this, Zhao Jian also wanted to follow, but Huang Futing and the others directly blocked him at the door. Young Master has already made things very clear. Don't waste your time here. Huang Futing blocked Zhao Jian. As long as it was someone the young lord did not want to see, they would not let him appear in front of the young lord. Are you trying to take revenge on purpose? Zhao Jian looked at Huang Futing coldly, his voice cold. Huang Futing chuckled. I've never treated you as an opponent. Bang! The doors of the darkness sanctum closed, shutting Zhao Jian and the others out. Young lord, will Zhao Jian be trouble? Mu Yangxi's face was filled with worry. It was a critical moment now. If something went wrong at this time, wouldn't it be troublesome? Chapter 60-52. Please enter the text. Please note, according to the requirements of the relevant laws and regulations of the country, please do not upload any pornographic, vulgar, political, or other illegal content. We will review and handle it according to the laws and regulations and report it. Once the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, trouble is inevitable. I hope that everyone is mentally prepared. No matter what kind of criticism and attacks we face, we must persist in our beliefs and not waver. Bewitching's gaze swept across everyone with a serious and solemn expression. Hundreds of years ago, darkness attribute cultivators once caused a catastrophe in the upper realm. This caused everyone to have a deep misunderstanding of us. Although what happened back then had nothing to do with us, this is still a responsibility that we can't avoid. All pioneering works will definitely be criticized in the beginning. But as long as we succeed, many darkness attribute cultivators will find a home. We don't even have to worry about how our future generations will survive after awakening the darkness attribute. I want to know if you have this awareness. If not, you can choose to leave now. Every word Bewitching said seemed to explode in everyone's hearts. In fact, they had been thinking more about the various benefits after the Dark Sacred Assembly was established. However, the problems that they might encounter when the Dark Sacred Assembly was established had been deliberately ignored by everyone. After Bewitching's reminder, they also understood that before they could taste the fruits of victory, they would probably experience a very tragic scene. Everyone fell into silence, but no one chose to leave. Young master, don't worry. We've long been prepared to die. No matter what happens, our firm beliefs will not change. As one of the cultivators stood out and voiced his opinion, the other cultivators also expressed their opinions one after another. Usually, we've always been looked down upon by everyone because of our attributes. It's even difficult for us to be upright. Only after following the young master did I find a new direction in life. Instead of dragging out a feeble existence, it's better to fight. I believe that if we follow the young master, we'll definitely succeed. But even if we fail, we won't have any complaints. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept across everyone. They were clearly different faces, but everyone's expressions were so similar. Courage, struggle, indomitable and fearless courage. It was as if nothing could break their morale. They were like the rising sun, unstoppable. Feeling the hope and passion from everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be affected by such emotions. Establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly was a pioneering work. Once it succeeded, he would change the structure of the upper realm. Huang Futing and Mu Yangxi looked at each other. They did not speak first because they wanted to see everyone's thoughts. Now that everyone was so determined, they were completely relieved. Bewitching looked at everyone's performance with satisfaction, and his voice was a little more gentle. Since everyone is mentally prepared, don't be afraid of the risk. I will choose a suitable date. Within this month, the Dark Sacred Assembly will appear before the eyes of the world. Established. 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 Everyone could not help but raise their hands and cheer. This was a day that they were looking forward to. It was also a day of violent storms, but they were not afraid. The storm would definitely come, but they were ready at any time. Chapter 60-53. After being chased out of the door, Zhao Jian's expression was extremely gloomy. Usually, it was fine to receive such treatment from other people. However, when faced with cultivators of the same dark attribute, he was also treated with such disdain. This was simply too aggrieving. Bewitching clearly remembered everything that had happened before. Initially, he did not understand, but now he completely understood. This fellow was simply playing with him. We really made the wrong decision back then. If we had not left back then, we would not have ended up in this state now. I see that their strength has increased by more than just a little compared to before. Young Master D definitely has the cultivation method of the dark attribute, and has even told everyone. If we want to blame someone, we can only blame ourselves for being blind. We did not cherish such a good opportunity in front of us. Now it's too late to regret. Everyone sighed. Previously, they did not know about this situation. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Now that they had seen it for themselves, the difference in their hearts could be imagined. Initially, everyone was in the same situation. Now they had been left far behind. One could imagine that in another 1 or 2 years, this difference would be infinitely magnified. Zhao Jian, who was already in a terrible mood, heard everyone's discussion. He felt ashamed and angry at the same time. Were these fellows trying to push all the blame onto him? Damned Huang Futing. This is all because of him. Zhao Jian gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with hatred and jealousy. This matter must be Huang Futing's doing. He doesn't want us to go in at all. Zhao Jian, what should we do now? Even though everyone was full of resentment towards Zhao Jian, at a time like this, there was no use in complaining. Finding a solution was the most important thing. Why don't we try to beg young Master Di again? I think we should go and ask Huang Futing. Based on young Master Di's performance just now, we can see that he values Huang Futing very much. If he's willing to speak up for us, our chances of winning will be much higher. Following the words of a cultivator, Zhao Jian's face was as gloomy as water. His dark eyes stared fixedly at the person who had spoken. The cold air in his eyes seemed to be able to freeze the person in an instant. The man was stunned. He also realized that he had said something wrong. To Zhao Jian, begging Huang Futing was probably the hardest thing to accept, even though it seemed like a very good idea to everyone else. I don't want to hear such words from you again. The man fell silent. No matter how unwilling he was, he had no other choice. Now if he were to give up on this place, he would be the only one left. He really didn't know where to go. It's impossible for Huang Futing to help us. It's useless even if you beg him. Zhao Jian's voice was cold. Don't think that he would be so kind. Did you see him say anything for us from the start? Everyone lowered their eyes, their faces filled with disappointment. Since Huang Futing is so heartless, then we'll make them suffer. A ruthless look surfaced in Zhao Jian's eyes. They were so poor now. How could they watch Huang Futing and the others live happily? If they were going to die, they would die together. Chapter 60-54. How could it be so easy to establish a dark sacred assembly? Zhao Jian chuckled. Even if Di Baichen is rich, this matter can't be solved with money alone. The entire upper realm will not allow the dark sacred assembly to be established. Furthermore, it's not a dark guild, but a dark sacred assembly. This is obviously a provocation to the light sacred assembly. I think it's a good thing that we haven't joined yet. When the time comes, once the major forces object, they might just destroy this place. If we lose our lives, what's the point of being proud for a short while? After calming down, Zhao Jian quickly understood the crux of the matter. Di Baichen and the others were definitely preparing for this matter. Moreover, they had even prepared a base of operations. It wouldn't be long before the actual establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Such an action might sound hot-blooded, but thinking about it carefully, the pressure they would have to bear was not something ordinary people could bear. Hearing Zhao Jian's words, everyone present was slightly stunned. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that what he said made sense. That's right. If the people from the major guilds come looking for trouble, they won't be able to resist at all. Even if they have the D family's protection, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult, right? The D family already has enemies. I feel that this matter won't be so easy to succeed. Everyone looked at each other. If this matter were to spread, everyone would think that Di Baichen was a madman. Even they couldn't understand why Di Baichen would take such a huge risk to do such a thing. If he wasn't careful, not only would he lose his life, but he would also implicate the entire Di family. Zhao Jian's gaze swept across everyone's faces. After noticing that everyone's resentment had lessened, he felt a lot more at ease. Zhao Jian, are you saying that you're going to ruin this matter? A man frowned as he looked at Zhao Jian. Zhao Jian raised his eyebrows and looked into the distance with a smug expression. Everyone knows about the enmity between the Di family, the Xiao family, and the Jun family. I heard that the Xiao family and the Jun family are now at a disadvantage. However, if we tell them this news, as long as they take the opportunity to do something, they might be able to turn the tables. At that time, the ones with a headache will be Di Baichen and Huang Futing. When he thought of Huang Futing's complacent look just now, he couldn't help but feel hatred. What right did this damned fellow have to live better than him? He wanted Huang Futing to live a miserable life. Just as Zhao Jian was feeling smug, he realized that there was no one around him who agreed with him. When he turned around, he realized that everyone was looking at him with complicated gazes. For a moment, he felt a little apprehensive and said in a daze, "Why are you all looking at me like that?" "Zhao Jian, I really didn't expect you to have such thoughts." The man's eyes were filled with disappointment, as if he did not expect that the person he had followed for so long would have such thoughts. "The establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly is beneficial to all of us. Even if young Master D hasn't accepted us yet, he said that if the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, we can also become a member. With his status, there was no need for him to do so much. However, in order for us, who were of the dark element, to be able to live openly, he had to bear and sacrifice so much. To any darkness attribute cultivator, he was a great benefactor. Yet, you actually want to harm him and prevent the Dark Sacred Assembly from being established." Chapter 6055. He was not the only one. Everyone else looked at Zhao Jian in disbelief as well. In the past, when they followed Zhao Jian, it was because Zhao Jian was also a very idealistic person. Although he was not on good terms with Huang Futing back then, he was also working hard to change everyone's situation. Huang Futing came from a big family, while Zhao Jian came from a humble background. Everyone thought that they had more in common with him, which was why they had been following him. However, they did not know when it started, but they realized that Zhao Jian had changed. He was no longer the same person as before. Once the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, it'll be of great help to all of us. Such thoughts shouldn't exist at all. Zhao Jian, you're no longer the person we trusted in the past. Everyone shook their heads. Their feelings were extremely complicated. Even when they were rejected previously, they had never felt so disappointed before. It turned out that the person they had always trusted was so narrow-minded. Noticing everyone's expressions, Zhao Jian could not help but panic. He quickly waved his hand and explained, "It's not what you think it is. Listen to me. You don't have to say any more. I think our thoughts have changed. I'll take my leave first." The man waved his hand. He did not want to listen to Zhao Jian's excuses anymore. They had been together for so many years, so they knew the latter very well. Whether it was his gaze or his tone, it proved that Zhao Jian was serious about everything that he said earlier. The other cultivators wanted to leave, but they did not have the courage to do so alone. Now that everyone else was leaving, how could they hesitate at all? Zhao Jian stood on the spot in a daze. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning as he watched everyone leave. He wanted to ask everyone to stay, but he could not make a sound when he opened his mouth. This was because even he did not know how to explain everything. After Bailey Hongzhuang understood Bewitching's plan, she did not hesitate and quickly headed to the Holy Light Assembly. Before the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, she had to figure out the Holy Light Assembly's thoughts. She knew that the Holy Light Assembly would definitely not like the Dark Sacred Assembly. However, it had been such a long time after all. Perhaps it was not that serious anymore. Of course, if the Holy Light Assembly was still so determined on this point, she felt that she had to discuss it with the president. She also had some feelings for the Holy Light Assembly. The president had always been very good to her. When the Jun family and the Xiao family joined forces to attack her, the Sacred Assembly even helped her. No matter what, she had the responsibility to deal with these matters properly. If the Holy Light Assembly could not accept it, she could also resign from her position as the Holy Maiden of the Light. At the very least, she could not implicate the Holy Light Assembly. Bewitching had planned to go with Bailey Hongzhuang because he was worried that something might happen along the way. This matter had a huge impact. One could imagine the president's reaction. If something went wrong, he wouldn't be at ease. However, Bailey Hongzhuang still refused. She believed that the guild leader wasn't that kind of person. Even if it was hard for the president to accept this, he would not do anything that would hurt him. If Bewitching went, it would be even more dangerous. Coming to the Holy Light Assembly again, looking at the holy building in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips raised a smile. Chapter 6056. As Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Holy Light Assembly, all eyes fell on her with worship and surprise. The Holy Maiden of Light. That's the Holy Maiden of Light. I didn't expect us to be so lucky to have the opportunity to see the Holy Maiden of Light. She is really as beautiful as the rumors say. She is unforgettable. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced around the hall before walking towards the stairs. The attendant rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said respectfully, "Holy Maiden, are you going to see the president?" "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, the corners of her lips raised in a gentle arc. The attendant stared blankly at the flawless face in front of him. This spring-like smile seemed to be directly reflected in his heart, and he couldn't recover his senses for a while. Seeing that the attendant didn't respond, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help waving her hand in front of him. "The president should be here, right?" "Yes, yes." The attendant came back to his senses, his face flushed with embarrassment and nervousness. "But the president is now meeting a guest. I'll go and inform him first." "Okay." As soon as the voice fell, the attendant rushed up and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help chuckling. This young man was really interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the room exclusive to the Holy Maiden of Light. Since the president was meeting a guest, she naturally wouldn't disturb him. It wouldn't be too late to see the president after the guest left. When Lu Hongwei heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had come, his eyes also lit up, and he looked at the man behind him with a smile. "Young Master Song, you are really lucky. The Holy Maiden happened to come to the guild today." Song Langtian breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this and said with a smile, "Zhu Qing, the Holy Maiden's medical skills are extremely outstanding. With the enhancement of the Holy Maiden's crystal, I believe your problem will be solved." "I hope so." Song Zhuqing's lips curled into a smile, but it could still be seen from his gloomy eyes that he was not too optimistic. In fact, he had already given up hope, but his father was unwilling to give up, and took him everywhere to seek medical treatment. Finally, they came to the Holy Light Assembly. The repeated disappointments made him feel very frustrated. Every time he saw a doctor, he was full of expectations, but the cruel reality beat him back again and again. He didn't want to be disappointed anymore, especially when he saw his father's tiredness because of him. He felt even more apologetic. Song Langtian already knew from Song Zhuqing's attitude that he didn't have much expectation, but he didn't think it was a bad thing to have such an attitude. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Even he was unable to maintain such a calm state of mind, because this was truly too torturous. Originally, he also had doubts about Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, but later, various situations showed that Bailey Hongzhuang might be the one with the best medical skills. So today, he had the cheek to bring Song Zhuqing here to seek medical treatment. In fact, he knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang was not in the Holy Light Assembly at all, but he felt that it was not appropriate to go directly to the D family. After thinking about it, the only way was to ask President Lu to take them to the D family together. After all, he and President Lu had been friends for many years. Chapter 6057. Go and invite the Holy Maiden over. Yes, Bailey Hongzhuang had just entered the room. She thought it would take a while to wait for the president's guest to leave, but she didn't expect the waiter to come so soon. "Holy Maiden, the president invites you over." Bailey Hongzhuang stood up and asked in confusion, "The guest has left." "No." The waiter shook his head. "The president should want to introduce her to you." As Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the president's office, she found that there were two other figures in the room besides President Lu. She felt very familiar with the elder in front of her. She seemed to have seen him at the succession ceremony of the Holy Maiden of Light, and the other young man's face was somewhat similar to him. If there was no accident, the two should be father and son. While Bailey Hongzhuang was sizing him up, the other party was also sizing her up. "Holy Maiden of Light, I haven't seen you for a long time since I saw you at the succession ceremony." Song Langtian smiled, his deep eyes full of appreciation. During this trip to the ancient battlefield, Bailey Hongzhuang's reputation had become more and more resounding, not only because of her identity as the Holy Maiden of Light, but also because of her own strength. "Hongzhuang, this is President Song of the Metal Attribute Guild. He once came to see your succession ceremony, but there were too many people at that time, so your impression may not be very clear." Lu Hongwei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was a little puzzled, so he explained aloud. Greetings, President Song. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands, smiling elegantly like a lotus, but her heart was a little complicated. She didn't expect to see the president of the other attributes today. Maybe it won't be long before they meet on the battlefield. Holy Maiden is too polite. Song Langtian cupped his hands. In fact, we came here today to ask for a favor. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang subconsciously looked at Lu Hongwei. Shouldn't the president be the one asking for a favor? Lu Hongwei smiled faintly. President Song's son was seriously injured by a monster beast when he was training previously. He was poisoned with a very strange poison, so his cultivation couldn't progress. Over the years they have thought of many ways, but they have never been able to solve it. Your medical skills have always been recognized, so they want to see if you have any ideas. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang came to a realization. She turned to look at Song Zhuqing again. No wonder she felt that he was unhappy when she first saw him. This was the first time Song Zhuqing had met Bailey Hongzhuang. Over the past few years, because his health had not improved, he had gradually changed from a cheerful personality to a depressed one. Back then, the succession ceremony had been a great event in the upper realm, but he hadn't come to observe it. This was because he didn't want to see his former friends and competitors. He didn't want to see everyone's sympathetic or mocking gazes. This would make him feel very uncomfortable. He had long heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's beauty, but he did not pay much attention to it. After all, with her identity as the Saint of Light, the rumors were always exaggerated. Everyone's evaluation of Xiao Soa was the same. As far as he was concerned, Xiao Soa was indeed a beauty. However, if she were to be described as a devastatingly beautiful woman, then it would be slightly inappropriate. However, the beautiful figure in front of him really made him believe in the word beauty. Chapter 60-58. Soon, Song Zhuqing realized that it was impolite for him to keep staring at a woman like this, and immediately retracted his gaze. I've heard a lot about you. Song Langtian was still a little worried after noticing Song Zhuqing's look. His son had not yet married, and had been focusing on cultivation, but after the setback, he had been depressed. His family also wanted to set a marriage for him, but he was not interested in anyone, which gave them a headache. If it was someone else, he would definitely be happy to see Song Zhuqing's admiration, but the other party was the Holy Maiden of Light. Fortunately, Song Zhuqing only showed a little amazement, which made him feel at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It turns out to be young Master Song, nice to meet you. Looking at the gentle and elegant Bailey Hongzhuang, a rare smile appeared on Song Zhuqing's face. He had forgotten how long it had been since he last smiled. It seemed that since the incident at the beginning, he had no effect anymore. However, in the face of such a beauty, it didn't seem appropriate to show her that face again. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at President Liu, and then said, How about I try to treat him? Song Langtian nodded immediately, his face full of enthusiasm. Holy Maiden, I'll have to trouble you then. Bailey Hongzhuang put her hand on Song Zhuqing's wrist to feel his pulse. She was also curious about what kind of demonic beast Song Zhuqing had been injured by that it would cause such a serious hidden disease. If the doctors in the upper realm couldn't cure him, then this poison was really not simple. As she felt his pulse, she suddenly discovered the strangeness in Song Zhuqing's body. Her eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and there was a trace of doubt and faintly surprise on her delicate face. Bailey Hongzhuang was aghast. She didn't expect Song Zhuqing to be poisoned with such a poison. There was silence in the room. Song Langtian held his breath and didn't dare to make a sound, for fear that he would affect Bailey Hongzhuang's diagnosis and treatment. This was the only hope they could think of. If even Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't cure her, then Song Zhuqing really had no hope in this life. When Song Langtian noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gradually dignified expression, his heart sank. It seemed that the situation was not optimistic. Seeing this, Lu Hongwei wanted to comfort Song Langtian, but after thinking about it he didn't speak. For this kind of thing, comforting wouldn't work at all. After a long while Bailey Hongzhuang finally released her hand, but she didn't say anything. Saintess, is there no cure for my condition? Song Zhuqing raised his eyes to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. His handsome but pale face was complex and sensitive. Even though he was trying his best not to show his despair, one could still see the hope and fear in his heart from his flickering eyes. Looking at Song Zhuqing like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart also sighed. This kind of thing was indeed a huge blow to a young man in his prime. What's more, Song Zhuqing was also a cultivation genius. Your illness is indeed very complicated, and the poison is extremely rare. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly. She had seen a lot of difficult and miscellaneous diseases, and she had mastered many more poisons than ordinary doctors. But it was really the first time she had encountered Song Zhuqing's poison. As soon as these words came out, everyone's heart trembled. Song Langtian and Song Zhuqing couldn't hide the disappointment on their faces. It seemed that this was really an incurable disease. Chapter 60-59. Although I have never seen this poison, I have some judgments in my heart. If you don't mind, I can give it a try. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Song Zhuqing seriously. If it were before, she might not have much confidence in the face of such a strange poison. Even if she wanted to study it, she was afraid it would take a lot of time. Just like when she studied the cursed body in her previous life, she also spent a lot of energy and time. In the current situation, she obviously didn't have much time to study this in detail. After all, the Dark Sacred Assembly was about to be established, and there were too many things to deal with. However, since she worshipped Grandma Hua as her master, her medical skills had become better and better. Many problems that were very difficult to solve in the past had now become much simpler. Many medicinal materials in the immortal domain were not available in the upper realm, which meant that the diseases that could not be solved in the upper realm were likely to be solved in the immortal domain. The crisp and pleasant voice came into the ears of Song Zhuqing, and others like the sound of nature. All three of them were sluggish for a moment, and after noticing each other's stunned expressions, they also understood that the voice they heard was not wrong. Song Zhuqing's breathing became rapid. He stared at Bailey Hongzhuang closely and asked cautiously, "Holy Maiden, do you mean there may be a way to cure this poison?" Although it was just a sentence of try, it was already very rare for Song Zhuqing, because almost none of the doctors he had seen before had said this word. Everyone shook their heads and sighed, advising him to find someone better. However, now Bailey Hongzhuang actually said that he could give it a try. At least there was still a glimmer of hope. "Holy Maiden, do you have a clue?" Song Langtian couldn't care less about maintaining the image of an elder at the moment. He only had one son, and he was almost worried about this matter. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had a way, she would be their savior. Lu Hongwei was also a little surprised and a little worried at the same time. Song Langtian and the others had been disappointed for too long. At this moment they were given hope. If it still couldn't be cured, the blow would be even greater. "Hongzhuang, do you really have a way?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "This poison is indeed very strange, but my medical skills have improved a little recently. After I do some research, I might be able to find a way." She already had some ideas in her mind. However, if she wanted to treat this illness, she still had to make a trip to the abandoned immortal forest. Because the herbs she needed were not available in the upper realm, and coincidentally, she did not have them in her chaos ring, so she could only go to the abandoned immortal forest to pick them. "Saintess, I'll have to trouble you then." Song Langtian's hands trembled slightly as he pulled Bailey Hongzhuang. As a father, he couldn't bear to see his son so dejected. "As long as you can cure Zhuqing, no matter what you need me to do, I will do it." "Guild leader Song, you're too polite." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, but her eyes were exceptionally bright. "If I can cure young Master Song, I hope that you can grant me a wish in the future." "What wish?" Song Zhuqing asked. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. No emotion could be seen on her delicate and beautiful face. "I don't know yet. When I have something to ask of you in the future, I hope you can do me a favor." Chapter 60-60. Seeing that Song Langtian agreed to her request without hesitation, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Perhaps even God was helping them. It was not difficult for her to help with the diagnosis and treatment, but it would be much easier if there was less resistance when the Dark Sacred Assembly was established. In Song Longtian's view, this request was not a request at all. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang cured Zhu Qing, they would never refuse to help whenever she needed help in the future. This so-called request was simply a special help, which made him think more highly of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down, her red lips slightly opened. This poison is indeed very rare. I already have some ideas in my mind, but before that, I need to collect young Master Song's blood, so that I can study it better. No problem. Song Zhuqing nodded without hesitation. As long as there was hope to change the situation, he was willing to do anything. I will study it in my room for the next few days. I'm afraid it will take some time. President Song and young Master Song may have to stay here for a few more days. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She needed to go to the abandoned immortal forest to find medicinal herbs, which would take a long time. What's more, she didn't intend to ask her master directly. If she could make the antidote herself, it would undoubtedly be the best. Song Langtian and Bailey Hongzhuang thought that they would have to stay here for a long time. But when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang say that it would only take a few days, they were a little puzzled. This poison was so difficult to detoxify. Could it be that it would only take a few days? Bailey Hongzhuang was actually a little helpless. If possible, the longer the better, but there were still many things to do now. So naturally there was no time to delay this. We have long been prepared for a long time to seek medical treatment. Holy Maiden, you don't have to worry about it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. In that case, I will go back to my room to study it. You don't have to pay attention to me these few days. I will naturally come out after I study it. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang had already collected the blood. All right. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang leave directly, Lu Hongwei had some doubts in his heart. He originally wanted to ask Hongzhuang why she came here today, but given the current situation, he decided not to ask for the time being. After returning to the house, Bailey Hongzhuang went to the abandoned immortal forest without hesitation. She had to pick the herbs as soon as possible, and it would take some time to find the solution. Granny Hua saw that Bailey Hongzhuang went straight to the forest to look for herbs after she arrived. She didn't say anything. Her disciple always had her own ideas. Even though she was his master, she wouldn't restrict him too much. What she liked the most was Bailey Hongzhuang's character. When she encountered a problem, she would not ask her first, but would think of a way to solve it. If she really encountered something that she couldn't solve, she would ask him about some small details. He just had to remind her a little, and she would often be able to figure out a solution on her own. Although this method would waste more time than teaching directly by himself, after a long time, one would understand that this was the best way to learn. In this way, even if he wasn't there in the future, she could still find a way to solve it. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, the atmosphere in the president's office was a bit strange. Chapter 60-61. Song Longtian's face was full of disbelief. Until now, he still couldn't believe what had just happened. It's not that I don't believe the Holy Maiden, but this poison is so difficult to detoxify. We have found so many doctors, but none of them have a clue. It's just a few days. Can the girl do it? According to his idea, to crack this strange poison, even if it didn't take 3 to 5 years, it would take at least a year and a half, right? Lu Hongwei spread out his hands. Only Hongzhuang knows about this matter. But with my understanding of her, she has never been a person who talks nonsense. Since she said such a thing, it proves that she should have a way. Anyway, it's just a few days, so just wait with peace of mind. No matter what the result is, she will tell us. Song Zhuqing also spoke up. Father, I believe in the Holy Maiden. For so long, Bailey Hongzhuang was the only doctor who said there was hope. What's more, there had long been rumors that Bailey Hongzhuang was the strongest doctor in the upper realm. Even Dr. Wu was her disciple, so there was no need to say anything else. Maybe for Bailey Hongzhuang, a few days was already a long time. Song Langtian nodded slightly. He hadn't seen Zhu Qing in such high spirits for a long time. Even if they failed in the end, they could still bear it. The sky gradually darkened, and the bright moon hung high in the sky, sprinkling silver-white light. "Young master, Madam hasn't come out yet." After entering the Holy Assembly. In the restaurant opposite the Holy Assembly, a white figure was sitting by the window, and the bright moonlight sprinkled on him through the window. His back was tall and straight like a pine tree, his temperament was like bamboo, and his ink-black long hair and white robe formed a sharp contrast, making him look more handsome, elegant, and noble. His slender fingers played with the glass, and his eyes turned slightly to look at the white building in front of him, his eyes as deep as a pool. "She should be fine." Bewitching drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. His narrow and handsome eyes narrowed slightly, flashing a fierce light, and his evil and noble face raised a cold arc. If the radiant sacred assembly dared to do anything to Hong Zhuang, he would destroy the entire radiant sacred assembly. Huang Futingjing sat at the side. Because the young master was worried about the madam coming here alone, he followed after the madam left. Actually, he understood the young master's feelings very well. Not to mention the young master, even he couldn't help but worry. What the madam had done this time was too risky. She had crossed the bottom line of the Holy Light Assembly. Once the Radiant Sacred Assembly objected or did something else, things would become complicated. "Young master, do you want me to ask around?" "No need." Bewitching's expression was calm. Based on his understanding of his wife, even if the Holy Light Assembly really wanted to harm her, it would be impossible for them to subdue her quietly. As long as there was no movement, it meant that there was no battle. However, looking at it from another perspective, this also meant that something unexpected had happened in the Holy Light Assembly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have stayed in there for so long. After Bailey Hongzhuang had brought the medicinal herbs back, she began to study them in her room. These medicinal herbs before her eyes were certainly unfamiliar to cultivators from the upper realm, but she already had a very good understanding of the medicinal properties and characteristics of these medicinal herbs. Chapter 60-62. 7 days. For 7 days, Bailey Hongzhuang had been studying the antidote to the toxin in her room. Even though she already had a certain idea in her heart, she found that the situation was more complicated than she thought when detoxifying the toxin. She took Song Zhuqing's blood, on the one hand, to study the characteristics of the toxin, and on the other hand, to verify that the antidote she had concocted could remove the toxin. Originally, she had already concocted a bottle of antidote on the 4th day, but she found that the effect was a certain gap from what she expected. The toxin could indeed be controlled, but it could not be completely solved. Therefore, she began to study again, trying to add some medicinal materials, and change the quantity of the medicinal materials. It wasn't until the 6th day that she determined the type of medicinal materials, but the dosage still needed to be changed. This seemed to be a very simple matter, but a little difference in the dosage would cause a difference in the effect. She had tried many times, changed many parameters, and constantly improved her antidote. Even though her body was exhausted, she was in a paranoid state and couldn't feel it at all. She just kept trying, and whenever she found a little change, she would record it for a better comparison. "President Liu, the Holy Maiden has not moved for 7 days. She should at least come out to eat something, right?" Song Langtian kept pacing outside the house. Even though he always felt that this kind of thing would take a year and a half to solve, these 7 days seemed to be particularly long for him. Every day, he looked forward to the door being opened, hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang could bring them good news. Song Zhuqing also looked at the closed door in front of him. In the past few days, he could feel that the movement inside had never stopped. Originally, everyone thought that no one knew what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing after she closed the door, but now no one doubted it anymore. The situation inside might be far more difficult than they thought. Hongzhuang said not to disturb her after going in. "In my opinion, we'd better not disturb her." Lu Hongwei's mood was also a bit complicated. He could vaguely guess Bailey Hongzhuang's current state. It was probably not easy. Just as everyone was talking, they heard a rustling sound coming from the house again. And then the door that had been closed suddenly opened. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang again, everyone's eyes changed, and their hearts trembled. At this moment, although Bailey Hongzhuang was still breathtakingly beautiful, the dark circles under her eyes and the faint tiredness she revealed told everyone that she had been through a lot these past few days. Without looking away, Bailey Hongzhuang could see the messy room through the gap between the door and the room. Countless herbs and medicine bottles were placed on the table. Each bottle contained a different potion. The entire room was extremely messy, as if there wasn't even a place to stand. It was clearly an extremely messy environment, but it made everyone's hearts tremble. For 7 whole days, Bailey Hongzhuang had been studying here and never stopped. Song Zhuqing had mixed feelings. He felt guilty that Bailey Hongzhuang had worked so hard because of him. I've developed it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a bright smile. Under the contrast of that smile, the entire room seemed to be sprinkled with bright and beautiful sunlight. Chapter 60-63. Looking at the small bottle of potion in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, the purple potion swayed slightly in the glass bottle, reflecting a crystal-clear light like an amethyst, looking dazzling and dreamy. This potion can detoxify my poison. Song Zhuqing stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, his expression a bit sluggish, as if it was hard to believe that this small bottle of potion could solve the poison that had troubled him for so long. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her smile as warm and dazzling as the sun. I have tested it many times, there should be no problem. Why don't you try it? Lifting her hand gently, Bailey Hongzhuang put the potion in Song Zhuqing's hand with a smile. Song Zhuqing's hand trembled slightly. After being cooped up in the room for such a long time, his skin had become very white. His slender palm was full of bones. It was obviously just a small bottle of potion, but in his hand, it seemed to be as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Song Langtian understood Song Zhuqing's complicated mood, but he was more excited. He believed that the Holy Maiden of Light would never lie about this kind of thing, and lying was meaningless because it would be exposed immediately. If Zhuqing's poison could really be detoxified, then it would be a great surprise for them. Zhuqing, go and try it. Song Langtian looked at Song Zhuqing excitedly. After waiting for so long, this day finally came. No matter what, he had to give it a try. Hearing his father's voice, Song Zhuqing came back to his senses. He nodded and shifted his gaze from Song Langtian to Bailey Hongzhuang. Holy Maiden, I'll try it. Okay. Song Zhuqing left quickly, and Song Langtian couldn't help but leave with him. Only Lu Hongwei stayed in place, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Hongzhuang, your medical skills are really amazing now. Lu Hongwei sighed in his heart. So many doctors couldn't find a solution, but Bailey Hongzhuang only spent 7 days to develop an antidote. This was too surprising. At the same time, he also understood that this had something to do with Bailey Hongzhuang's efforts. If it was an ordinary person, who would research for so long without sleep and rest? To ordinary people this was simply insane. However, when this kind of thing happened to Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't think it was an exaggeration, because Bailey Hongzhuang was a person who worked so hard that it was hard to imagine. If she hadn't worked hard enough, she wouldn't have been able to dabble in so many aspects. She could even be said to be exquisite in every aspect. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Didn't the president always ask me to study medicine? Do you know how to cure the Saintess crystal now? Lu Hongwei smiled. I've already mastered it. The healing power of the Holy Maiden crystal is really strong. However, young Master Song is poisoned. All he needs is the antidote. Can this medicine really cure his problem? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Does the president not believe in my ability? Of course I believe in you. Lu Hongwei waved his hand. Who in the entire upper realm doesn't know that your medical skills are the most exquisite? With that said, Lu Hongwei slowly walked into the room. During the conversation, he noticed that there were some medicinal materials in the room that he seemed to have never seen before. Hongzhuang, why do I seem to have never seen these medicinal materials before? Lu Hongwei picked up a medicinal material and looked at it carefully, his eyebrows full of doubts. Chapter 60-64. When they first found out that the saint's crystal had a certain effect on treatment, They spent a lot of effort to find out how to use it. As the president, he spent the most time. So even if he didn't know much about most of the herbs, he had seen them before. There were also doctors among the members of the Holy Light Assembly. Under the influence of these doctors, even if he could not name them, he could at least get familiar with them. However, these herbs in front of him were very unfamiliar, as if he had never seen them before. President, you've studied these herbs? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She thought that neither President Lu nor President Song were doctors and didn't know much about these herbs, so she didn't hide it. She didn't expect President Lu to see the uniqueness of these herbs at a glance. She couldn't hide it anymore. I only know a little about them. Lu Hongwei smiled faintly, but his gaze was very serious. He could feel that these herbs were a little different just by holding them in his hand. These herbs seem to be of a higher grade than the spiritual herbs that I usually see? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. President, you have good eyesight. Is this true? Lu Hongwei was slightly stunned. Even if he said so, he couldn't be sure. Just by looking at these herbs, he couldn't help but have this thought. I obtained these spiritual herbs when I was training. From what I know, these spiritual herbs don't seem to be in the upper realm. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. After the appearance of the ancient battlefield, many people probably already knew that there was a stronger plane above the upper realm. President Lu was so smart, so how could he not know? Moreover, these spiritual herbs came from the immortal domain, so they couldn't be seen in the upper realm. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, President Lu's eyes were filled with amazement. He suddenly understood some things that he didn't understand. No wonder Mr. Song's poison can't be cured, but you can. It's because you have spiritual herbs that the upper realm doesn't have. He always thought that there must be a way to cure the poison in the world. The reason why it couldn't be cured was because one's ability wasn't enough. Originally, he didn't understand where Bailey Hongzhuang got her confidence from, but now he understood. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled elegantly. I just happen to have these spiritual herbs. After seeing the poison that Mr. Song was afflicted with, I felt that these spiritual herbs might be able to cure it. After several days of research, I found that the effect is indeed feasible. Since these spiritual herbs can't be found in the upper realm, their value must be extremely high. Lu Hongwei's voice was somewhat emotional. Although he didn't directly say it, the meaning was very obvious. Such a precious herb was used to detoxify Song Zhuqing. There was no connection between them at all. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, no one else would do such a thing. 7 whole days. He had probably wasted a lot of medicinal herbs. Medicinal herbs exist for the purpose of saving lives. If we just keep it, it's just a stalk of grass. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. These herbs were actually not rare in the immortal region. There were quite a few of them in the abandoned immortal forest. She did not spend too much time, and had already harvested quite a lot. The abandoned immortal forest was so rich in herbs, yet it was still rejected by the immortal domain. It could be seen that the immortal domain's land must be even richer. Chapter 60-65. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lu Hongwei's gaze changed slightly, and there was a trace of appreciation and admiration. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was destined to be the Holy Maiden of Light. Many people did not have this kind of breadth of mind. After returning to the house, Song Zhuqing couldn't wait to try it. After so long, this was the first antidote he had obtained. The moment he opened his mouth, he hesitated for a moment, but thinking of Bailey Hongzhuang's confident smile, he swallowed the potion without hesitation. Song Langtian had been accompanying Song Zhuqing, and after seeing him drink the potion, he anxiously paid attention to his changes. Song Zhuqing didn't feel any change after drinking the potion, but this situation didn't last long. Suddenly, his whole body seemed to be on fire, and a terrible burning sensation burst out in his body. In just a short moment, Song Zhuqing's face turned as red as a cooked shrimp, showing an extremely painful appearance. Zhuqing, what's the matter with you? The sudden scene was beyond Song Langtian's expectations. Even the president, who was usually calm and collected, was flustered at this moment. Zhuqing, what's the matter with you? I'm going to find the Holy Maiden. Song Langtian stood up and was about to find Bailey Hongzhuang when he suddenly heard a wah sound. He quickly turned around and saw Song Zhuqing spitting out a mouthful of black blood. The black blood was almost solidified. Unlike the bright red blood, this black blood looked like a poisonous substance, filthy and disgusting. This is poisonous blood? Song Langtian looked at the black blood and immediately understood in his heart. They had always known that there was still residual poison in Song Zhuqing's body, but they couldn't completely remove the poison after thinking of many ways. However, now that Song Zhuqing suddenly vomited, even if he was not a doctor, he understood that this was a good thing. Song Zhuqing leaned limply on the chair, his face pale, and there was still bright red blood hanging from the corners of his lips. Although he was extremely weak, his eyes were blooming with an unprecedented bright brilliance. Father, the poison seems to be really detoxified. Ever since he was poisoned, he had always felt an indescribable pressure lingering in his heart. His entire being was extremely stifled, and even his breathing seemed to be shrouded by the pressure. But now, he felt that his breathing had become very relaxed, which was completely different from the usual situation. Why don't you try circulating your essence energy? Song Langtian looked at Song Zhuqing in surprise, and his breathing quickened. The surprise came too suddenly, and he couldn't believe it. He was only worried that it was fake. That was the real feeling of falling from heaven to hell. Song Zhuqing nodded and carefully circulated her essence energy. When he realized that the trace of origin energy had merged with his dantian, which had been stagnant for a long time, finally gained a trace of strength, he couldn't help but want to cheer. All right. The poison is really gone. Song Zhuqing looked at Song Langtian excitedly, her eyes full of tears. Even if he was a man, he could no longer suppress his emotions at this time. He had waited too long for this day. He had originally thought that his life was over, but now, he had actually succeeded. Hearing Song Zhuqing's words, Song Langtian was completely relieved. He couldn't help but burst into tears. God was not too cruel to them. His son had come back to life. Chapter 60-66. After detoxifying the poison, Song Zhuqing didn't care about his weak body. He just wanted to thank Bailey Hongzhuang properly. Detoxifying the poison was equivalent to giving him a second chance at life. He could finally cultivate again. As the son of the president, it was the most painful thing for him to become a useless person who couldn't improve his strength. More than once, he felt that he was simply a disgrace to his father. However, in the face of his father's concern and his family's expectations, the pain in his heart was simply indescribable. Especially when he saw his family's disappointment over and over again, but still covered up and comforted him. His heart was bleeding. This time they really came to the right place. He finally didn't have to see his family sad for him. Even if he started cultivating again now and his strength had fallen a lot, he didn't care because as long as he could still cultivate, this was already the happiest thing. When Song Zhuqing and Song Langtian returned, they heard the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei. Only then did they understand why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to detoxify the poison that so many people couldn't detoxify. It turned out that the medicinal herbs used to make the potion were so precious. Medicinal herbs that the upper realm didn't have. Just this point alone, as long as these medicinal herbs were taken to the auction house, they would definitely be sold at a sky-high price. However, Bailey Hongzhuang actually used these medicinal herbs to help him concoct the antidote, and even wasted so much. Song Langtian and Song Zhuqing couldn't help but look at each other. They owed her a big favor. They had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had not slept or rested for 7 days to find a way to detoxify the poison. They were already very apologetic, but they had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had paid far more than them. It was just the first time they met, and they didn't even ask for any compensation. Bailey Hongzhuang had paid so much, which really made them feel ashamed. Holy Maiden. Song Zhuqing slowly walked into the room and looked at the graceful figure with a deep and complicated gaze. The next moment he bowed deeply. Thank you, Holy Maiden, for saving my life. Looking at Song Zhuqing's actions, Lu Hongwei knew that the medicine concocted by Bailey Hongzhuang was really effective. He was even more amazed. Young Master Song, there's no need to be so polite. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This poison doesn't actually affect your life, so there's no need to thank me for saving your life. Speaking of which, even she felt that this poison was very unique. It would only suppress the cultivator's cultivation and prevent them from cultivating, but it would not affect their life. If the poisoned person was just an ordinary person, there would be no effect at all. However, Song Zhuqing shook his head. His fair and handsome face was filled with seriousness as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a deep sense of gratitude. Ever since I was poisoned, I've been like a walking corpse for the past few years. Although I'm not dead, I don't feel like I'm truly alive. Only now have I truly come back to life, so this is a life-saving grace to me. Song Zhuqing's gaze was solemn. Miss Bailey, I will always remember this kindness in my heart. No matter what happens in the future, as long as you need my help, I will never refuse. Looking at Song Zhuqing's serious look, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that this man, who was not much older than her, was an honest and upright person. She didn't say much because this kind of person wouldn't change his mind easily once he had decided on something. What's more, she had something to ask the Metal Guild for help. Chapter 60-67. Her original intention of saving Song Zhuqing was not simple, and a larger part of the reason was because of Song Longtian's identity. In fact, she also understood that after the news of the Dark Sacred Assembly spread out, there would definitely be a lot of opposition. Even if Song Longtian was the president of the Metal Guild, he couldn't completely stop it. However, she believed that the identity of the president still had a certain effect. As long as they could reduce the resistance a little, it would be a success for them. Holy Maiden, thank you so much. Song Longtian's face was full of smiles. Although there had been a lot of smiles on his face in the past few days, it was only this time that it really came from the bottom of his heart. Without the layer of worry that had been lingering in his heart, he felt relaxed all over. It's nothing, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Under the invitation of Song Longtian and Song Zhuqing, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei followed the two to the restaurant for dinner. She understood that if she didn't agree, Song Longtian and Bailey Hongzhuang would feel apologetic. Young master, Madam has been in there for 7 days, and there is no news until now. Shall we go in and take a look? Huang Futing looked at Di Beichen, who was still maintaining that posture, and looking at the Holy Assembly, with extreme admiration in his heart. After waiting for so many days in a row, he couldn't hold back anymore. There was no movement for such a long time. If Madam was in danger, wouldn't it be troublesome? Even if the young master was just sitting there calmly and indifferently, with an elegant temperament that seemed otherworldly, he knew that the young master must be more anxious than him. What he admired the most was the young master's temperament. After enduring for so long, he didn't rush out directly to take a look. No hurry, Di Beichen said slowly. She should be delayed by other things. Young master, how did you know? Huang Futing frowned. They had been staying in the restaurant since they came here, and there was no news from the Holy Assembly at all. This situation was impossible to judge at all. Based on my understanding of her, Di Beichen's lips curved slightly. Hongzhuang never did anything unprepared. This time, he insisted on coming because he wanted to set his mind at ease. But he knew that since Hongzhuang dared to come here by herself, it proved that she was confident. There was no movement for so long, something else must have happened. Upon hearing Di Beichen's words, Huang Futing was also slightly stunned. He had always felt that the young master and madam were a pair with great tacit understanding. Perhaps he was really too anxious? While they were waiting, four figures suddenly appeared in front of the radiant sacred assembly. Young master, it's madam, Huang Futing said excitedly. Di Beichen turned his eyes and looked at the elegant white figure below. His eyes were not as calm as usual, but had a trace of gentleness. Madam is indeed fine. Huang Futing heaved a sigh of relief. Although he didn't understand what had happened in the past 7 days, since his wife could still talk and laugh, it proved that there really was no problem. But why is Madam with President Song? President Song? Bewitching raised an eyebrow. Huang Futing nodded slightly. The one beside President Liu is President Song. He is the president of the Metal Attribute Guild. I met him once a few years ago. The young man beside him is his son Song Zhuqing. I heard that he was once poisoned, causing his cultivation to be unable to progress. I didn't expect to see him here. Chapter 60-68. So that's how it is. Huang Futing was a little puzzled. Just now, he clearly felt that the atmosphere was inexplicably low, but after he finished his introduction, it suddenly became relaxed again. What exactly did I say to change the atmosphere? Madam should have been treating Song Zhuqing's illness these days, so there has been no news. Bewitching said slowly, although he had always firmly believed that the lack of news these days was not because something had happened to Hong Zhuang. He was also a little puzzled. What was the reason for Hong Zhuang's delay for so many days? When he found out that Song Zhuqing was poisoned, he connected the dots and guessed the whole story from beginning to end. He had seen the process of Hong Zhuang developing the antidote. Once she started researching, everything around her seemed to be automatically blocked by her. It seemed that she had been studying how to detoxify the poison for the past 7 days. As for coming out together now, it must be that the detoxification was successful. Even though he had just taken a casual glance, he was keenly aware that President Song and Song Zhuqing were extremely polite to Hong Zhuang. Even if Hong Zhuang was the holy maiden of the light world, her attitude was a little too warm. However, after connecting all the dots, everything made sense. Huang Futing finally understood. So that's the case. No wonder I felt that President Song was particularly warm when I looked at him just now. Young master, do you think Madam is doing this for us? Bewitching's eyes gradually deepened, but he just looked at the figure outside the window without speaking. Bailey Hongzhuang had lunch under the warm hospitality of President Song and Song Zhuqing. The other party wanted to invite her to the Metal Attribute Guild as a guest, but they gave up after she repeatedly declined. Hong Zhuang has been with me for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen President Song so warm. If others saw it, I'm afraid they wouldn't believe it. Lu Hongwei was full of smiles. He and Song Langtian had known each other for a long time. This guy was usually upright and plain-spoken, and even his son followed his temperament. Usually, even if others tried to curry favor with him, he wouldn't pay much attention. As for treating others so warmly, that was unprecedented. President Song is a very good person, and he loves his son very much. After she cured Song Zhuqing, he could feel that President Song was more excited than Song Zhuqing. This was the difficulty of being a parent. Lu Hongwei nodded slightly then said, "Why did you come to the sacred assembly this time? Based on my understanding of you, if there's nothing, you probably wouldn't take the initiative to come to the assembly." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little embarrassed. Thinking about it carefully, she really hadn't taken it back for a long time. I came to the sacred of the assembly of the sacred assembly. I have something to discuss with President Song. Oh. Lu Hongwei raised his eyebrows. There's no harm. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and then said, "President, let's wait until we're in the house." This was no small matter, and there were many people around, so he naturally wouldn't let the matter be exposed. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's grave expression, Lu Hongwei nodded, and his expression became a little more serious. Chapter 60-69. President, what do you think of the dark attribute cultivators? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lu Hongwei tentatively. She didn't go straight to the point. If Lu Hongwei's attitude was extremely firm, then she didn't have to say too much. Such a strange question was undoubtedly beyond Lu Hongwei's expectations. He frowned slightly and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with some doubts. Dark attribute cultivators? Why are you suddenly asking me this question? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. I feel that the upper realm cultivators seem to reject the dark attribute, so I wanted to ask for your opinion, President. Lu Hongwei pondered for a moment. How could he not know that Bailey Hongzhuang must have other motives for asking this question? It was just that before he agreed, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't say the real reason. Actually, I know about the situation between you and young Master D. Not only is young Master D a dark attribute cultivator, but he's also a very outstanding one. Lu Hongwei paused, then continued. Actually, when you were chosen as the Holy Maiden of Light, everyone was quite controversial. The main reason was your union with young Master D. Although you haven't been in the upper realm for long, I believe you have some understanding of the war hundreds of years ago. This kind of thing is a problem left behind by the era. But now no one will talk about the attribute problem between you and young Master D. You don't have to worry. Thinking back to when Bailey Hongzhuang became the Holy Maiden of Light, if it wasn't because the Holy Maiden of Light hadn't appeared for too long, and the Holy Maiden Crystal had recognized Bailey Hongzhuang, there would inevitably be twists and turns. However, everyone was too expectant of the saintess of the Holy Light. Hence, they turned a blind eye to this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This matter really didn't make it too difficult for her at that time. She also knew in her heart that the president must have helped her to solve it. President, what I actually want to know more is whether you reject the dark attribute cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and said seriously, actually, the attribute is not something that can be decided by the cultivator himself. Isn't it a little biased to defeat an entire boat of people just because of one attribute? Lu Hongwei frowned when he heard that. Hongzhuang, I feel like you're not happy with the current situation. Don't tell me. Or perhaps Di Beichen is planning something. As the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, Lu Hongwei was not a fool. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had only said a few probing words, he had already guessed it. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hide it anymore. Actually, from the moment she came here, she knew that she couldn't hide this news from the president. However, she believed in the president. President, I believe in your character, and I'm very grateful for your care all this time. It was all thanks to your help that I was able to become the saintess of the light. I guess you already know why I'm here today. I'm here to ask for your opinion. If you don't agree, I'll resign from the position of the saintess of the light. I don't want to implicate the entire Radiant Sacred Assembly because of my personal actions. At the same time, I also hope that you can keep this a secret and don't spread it. Chapter 60-70. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lu Hongwei's pupils shrunk and his heart was filled with shock. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a complicated expression and remained silent for a long time. Because these words brought him too much shock. He always knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had a very deep relationship, but he never thought that she would be willing to give up the position of Holy Maiden for Di Beichen. This was an important position in the eyes of others, but she could so calmly say that she would give it up. From her expression, there was not even the slightest bit of struggle, as if this position was not worth mentioning compared to Di Beichen. He did not know if it was because of this reason that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to surpass Xiao Shou to become the Holy Maiden. The two of them had completely different attitudes towards this position. However, other than this, he was even more surprised by Bailey Hongzhuang's trust in him. If such an important matter was leaked out, it would definitely cause a huge impact. As long as he opposed it, Bailey Hongzhuang might not be able to leave from today onwards. She clearly knew that coming here would be risky, but she still insisted on coming, in order not to affect the Holy Assembly, and also to give him an explanation. In fact, thinking about it carefully, he had not done anything for Bailey Hongzhuang. He had always been protecting the Holy Maiden. When the Xiao family and the Jun family made a move against Bailey Hongzhuang, they had ignored the title of the Holy Maiden and trampled on the dignity of the Holy Assembly. This young girl in front of him had remembered everything in her heart and was full of respect and gratitude towards the Holy Assembly. Under such circumstances, even if he opposed this matter, he could not be extremely agitated. In the face of such an honest and sincere child, all means and schemes seemed too dirty. Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry, and only quietly waited for Lu Hongwei's answer. She knew that her words would definitely cause a shock. At this moment, Lu Hongwei's feelings must be extremely complicated, and he needed time to think it over. However, she believed that she had not misjudged him. After a long while, Lu Hongwei, who had been silent all this time, slowly said, "Hongzhuang, you are really bold." Noticing that Lu Hongwei did not turn hostile, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly sighed in relief. At least this meant that the situation did not develop in the worst direction. You should be very clear about the discrimination and exclusion towards the dark attribute. Young Master D himself is an exception. Not only is he the young master of the D family, but he is also an extremely powerful dark attribute practitioner. There are many reasons why he has reached this step, and one of them is because you are the Holy Maiden. Lu Hongwei's face was serious. Di Beichen's success was almost impossible to replicate, because he had too many factors. In addition to his own strength, the Di family and Bailey Hongzhuang were also his helpers. Thinking back to when everyone knew that Di Beichen had the dark attribute, their feelings were actually very complicated. He believed that the Di family also had some complaints, but they were suppressed by the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I understand the president's meaning. It is because Beichen has the dark attribute, and also because he understands the situation of dark attribute practitioners, that he wants to change everything. Chapter 60-71. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's serious expression, Lu Hongwei sighed faintly. Hongzhuang, there's no such thing as fairness in this world to begin with. Some people are arrogant and despotic, doing all kinds of bad things, but they live a very glorious life, while some people have a stable life, but inexplicably lose their lives. Many times we see a lot of injustice, but we can't do anything about it. In this world, the weak are prey to the strong, and the strong are respected. You said that everyone has blocked the path of dark cultivators. That's right. But have you ever thought that Di Beichen still managed to stand up? As long as he's strong enough and has a respectable status, even if he's a dark cultivator, he's still in existence that everyone respects. Lu Hongwei's gaze was distant, and his expression was complicated. What happened back then was a huge blow to them, but it was also a form of training. The power of dark cultivators is really terrifying, and their methods of controlling corpses are even more terrifying. You don't know what happened back then, and you don't understand what kind of catastrophe they went through back then. Actually, everyone knows that this kind of behavior is cruel to them, but once they're allowed to develop, it'll be even more cruel to us. Listening to these words, the look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face became complicated. Perhaps they had different ideas from those in power. What they saw was how difficult the lives of dark cultivators were. But what Lu Hongwei and the others saw was the destructive power of dark cultivators on the entire upper realm. Therefore, they would rather let these people suffer than let more people bear the risk. Actually, it couldn't be said that anyone's thoughts were wrong. It was just that their standpoints were different. Her thoughts were shaken for a moment, but she quickly stabilized them again. Because, in this world, there could be strong people appearing at any time. Even if dark cultivators were very strong, it didn't mean that they wanted to control or destroy the entire world. President, I think that if everyone treated the darkness attribute cultivators with a normal attitude, the incident back then might not have happened. Her bright phoenix eyes were clear and serious. If a cultivator with peerless talent and astonishing ambition appeared in another guild, he would also be able to do all of this. Actually, I don't think worry is a reason. Although dark cultivators are very powerful, the number of awakened dark cultivators is very small. In fact, after so many years of suppression, their living space had become smaller and smaller, and their strength was generally lower. Why can't we give them a chance to survive? They had already considered this problem long before they decided to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly with Di Beichen. No matter which faction it was, there would definitely be some people with dark hearts. It was not only the dark attribute. Since the dark attribute already existed in this world, why couldn't everyone treat it normally? Just as He Xinjun thought. He only hoped that everyone could face the darkness attribute and not look down on it. Lu Hongwei's expression was solemn. He actually wanted to persuade Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a move was too dangerous. It wasn't easy for the Holy Light Assembly to find the Holy Maiden of Light, and no matter how they looked at it, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was very satisfactory. Chapter 60-72. It would be best if he could convince Bailey Hongzhuang to give up on this plan. However, based on the current situation, he was afraid that he would not be able to convince Bailey Hongzhuang at all. Even he could not refute some of the latter's words. If this matter was imperative, and if Bailey Hongzhuang continued to hold the title of Saint of the Light, things would become very complicated. As the president, he knew too well that the Light Sacred Assembly was the most resistant to the dark attribute among all the guilds. This was because the dark attribute was the opposite of the Light Sacred Assembly. Hongzhuang, I understand what you're thinking, but what you're doing is going against the law of the world. Even if you have the protection of the D family and the Lin family, you still can't withstand such pressure. Do you really want to do this? This won't do you any good at all. Lu Hongwei could not understand. This was indeed a good way to save the dark attribute cultivators from the fire and water. However, with Bewitching's situation, it was not worth it at all. We're all very clear about this. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. Her deep eyes were shining with a dazzling light. But as long as we live in this world, there are many things that must be done, even if it's a big risk, even if it's a failure. President, I expected that you wouldn't agree. As long as you don't publicize this matter in advance, I'm already very grateful. A faint smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's fair and delicate face. She roughly understood Lu Hongwei's thoughts, but she was still very grateful. Because Lu Hongwei was willing to tell her so much, it proved that he treated her sincerely. If he did not care about her at all, he would not have to go through so much trouble to say that Zhishi was evil. He might even have taken action. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's unwavering expression, Lu Hongwei sighed. He had seen many outstanding juniors, and Bailey Hongzhuang was without a doubt the most outstanding of them all. In fact, he also understood that some people would often do things that ordinary people could not understand. They were paranoid and crazy, but it was these kinds of people who could very likely achieve things that would shock you. No matter if it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Bewitching, the risk was too great. Even if someone had thought about it before, no one dared to do it. However, these two young people had actually put such a crazy move into action. If he really succeeded, it would definitely be a huge undertaking. Do you already have a comprehensive plan? It won't be easy to accomplish all of this. Even if it does succeed, the darkness attribute inheritance has disappeared for many years. It will be very difficult to become stronger. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, Lu Hongwei spoke again. The reason why the various large guilds have been able to maintain their current state is because everyone's strength is evenly matched. If the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, but the members aren't strong enough, then it will be useless. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Don't worry, President. That won't be a problem. Lu Hongwei was slightly stunned. He could not help but think of Bewitching. Immediately he understood. So that's how it is. He actually has such luck. Bewitching had been watching the Light Sacred Assembly from the restaurant all this time. During the previous 7 days, Hongzhuang had not cut to the chase. After returning, Hongzhuang would definitely discuss this matter with guild leader Lu. Hence, now was the most crucial moment. Chapter 60-73. Huang Futing naturally understood that this was the most critical moment, so he kept a close eye on the Holy Light Assembly. The madam had taken such a huge risk for the sake of the Dark Sacred Assembly. No matter what, they must not let anything happen to the madam. Time passed by minute, but it was extremely unbearable for them. This was because they did not know what kind of decision President Lu would make. This was a gamble to begin with. After a long time, when the white figure appeared in front of the door of the Holy Assembly, Di Beichen's body that had been tense all this time relaxed. Huang Futing was just about to speak when he realized that his young master had disappeared. He hurriedly approached the window and realized that his young master had directly jumped down and appeared next to the madam. He immediately smiled and shook his head. His young master had always placed the madam at the top of his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out of the Holy Light Assembly. She thought that Beichen must be worried after being delayed here for so many days. She could not continue to stay here. She had to hurry back. Just as she was deep in thought, a white figure descended from the sky and appeared next to her in the blink of an eye. There was a moment of surprise on her beautiful and refined little face. After sensing the familiar and reassuring aura, a bright and beautiful smile bloomed on her peerless face. Many people on the street had noticed this scene. The young lady in white and the young man in white were standing together. The scene was pleasing to the eye and magnificent. When the crowd recognized the two of them, the amazement in their hearts deepened. Isn't that the Holy Maiden and young Master Di? That's right, it's them. The rumors are true. The relationship between the two of them is really enviable. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's reputation grew, their relationship became a much-told story. Many young men and women hoped that they could have such an unswerving love. Beichen, what are you doing here? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled as she looked at the stunningly handsome face. Even the sunlight was not as dazzling as him. Di Beichen held her little hand. I missed you. These three simple words touched Bailey Hongzhuang's heart inexplicably. How could she not know that Di Beichen was the one she was most worried about when she left? I haven't been back for so long. Beichen must be worried, so he came over. Don't worry. I'm fine. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her hand and interlocked her fingers with Di Beichen's. She felt at ease when she was with him. When she was alone, she had always been fearless. Only when she was with Beichen could she not think about anything and truly relax. Let's go home. Di Beichen didn't ask anything. He just gently held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and left the Holy Assembly. Go home. It was a very heartwarming word. Although nothing dangerous had happened in the past few days, she had to admit that she was really tired. She hadn't rested for 7 days. In addition, she was careful just now. Now that she was relaxed, she felt that her breathing had become smooth. After seeing the scene downstairs, Huang Futing didn't jump down immediately. Madam hadn't had it easy these days. He didn't want to be an eyesore. Therefore, he slowly walked down from upstairs. When he appeared in front of Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, the timing was just right. Let's go. We're going back. Di Beichen said. Chapter 60-74. Huang Futing's face was full of smiles. Isn't that so? Young master is worried about Madam's safety. Since you entered the Holy Light Assembly, we have been guarding here. Fortunately, Madam has finally come out today. Otherwise, I'm worried that young master would directly kill his way in. He finally understood that young master could be indifferent to everything. But when it came to Madam, he really took it to heart. Since the day I entered, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned and looked at Di Beichen with some surprise. She thought that Beichen came because she had been delayed here for a few days, but now it seemed that Beichen had been here since the day she set off. In that case, she had said so much to Beichen before, but Beichen did not change his mind at all. Under Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Di Beichen pretended not to hear and said to himself, "We've been out for a few days. It's time for us to go back." Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but laugh, but her heart felt exceptionally warm. She had always understood that Beichen cared about her very much. From the first time they met until now, as long as it was about her, Beichen had never neglected it. When searching for her origins, Beichen was more worried than her. When she came to the upper realm, Beichen was worried that she would be bullied. In fact, many times she understood that Beichen was not a person who would say everything, but it could be seen from the things he did. Just as she did not have to worry about the elders not liking her after she went to the Di family, she did not have to worry about her status after knowing about Xiao Soa's marriage. This was because she had enough trust in Beichen. Huang Futing also smiled faintly and did not say anything. Usually, when he was dealing with other matters, He did not see young master like this. Come to think of it, he would only act like this in front of Madame. Along the way, Bewitching didn't take the initiative to mention President Lu's reaction. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that Hong Zhuang didn't want to affect the Holy Assembly, they wouldn't have to come here at all. President Lu's position was completely different from theirs, so the possibility of him agreeing was close to zero. Bailey Hongzhuang also walked quietly, her mind still thinking about the conversation she had in the house. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang took the initiative to say, "I've already talked to Chairman Lu." "Okay," Bewitching replied. "Aren't you curious about the answer?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Bewitching. Her bright eyes were filled with curiosity. Bewitching raised their interlocked hands and chuckled. "I can roughly guess. At least President Lu is a good person. Otherwise, it wouldn't be you who walked out, but me who went in and snatched you out." Uft. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle and nodded. "You're right. President Lu is actually very good." After knowing my decision, although he was shocked, he didn't get angry because of it. For this reason, he specially reminded me of the risks I would have to face. He wanted to persuade me, but after seeing that I was unmoved, he didn't say anything more. "Madam, what is President Lu's attitude?" Huang Futing frowned. It seemed that after talking for a long time, there was still no result. "He neither supports nor opposes it," Bewitching said. Chapter 60-75. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Huang Futing could not help but sigh. However, he also understood that with President Lu's status, it was already good enough that he did not directly object. According to his understanding of the Holy Assembly, ordinary people would not accept this at all. Bewitching was not worried. In fact, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang did this for his own peace of mind, and also to give an explanation to the Holy Assembly. From the beginning to the end, she did not have any hope. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. In fact, President Lu's attitude was already a pleasant surprise for her. This was because Chairman Lu didn't refute it directly. On the contrary, Chairman Lu was well aware of the difficult situation that dark attribute cultivators had been in all these years. Even he had to admit that this situation was unfair to dark attribute cultivators. She clearly felt that President Lu was a little touched when she mentioned this point. She was very glad that they were not the only ones who thought of all this. Since President Lu had thought of this point, there must be others who had thought of it too. Even if the vast majority of people were still very resistant to the darkness attribute, she was very clear about this world. When some influential people agreed, the voices of opposition would quickly decrease. This was because the right to speak had always been in the hands of a small number of people. As long as the identity of darkness attribute cultivators was confirmed, even if it would take a long time for everyone to eliminate the views of rejection, it was not a big deal. The problem of time would eventually be solved with time. Bewitching, I think the situation may not be as bad as we think. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice sounded, and a faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. Hearing this, Bewitching and Huang Futing could not help but look at her. After seeing the slightly relaxed smile on the latter's face, their mood inexplicably improved. During this period of time, because the dark sacred assembly was about to be established, no one said anything on the surface, but everyone was under a lot of pressure. A storm was coming. Under the seemingly calm surface, everyone could not help but worry. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was so healing that it made them forget their worries. Bewitching looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "My wife's words are like gold." Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles, but her mind was thinking about President Lu's hesitant expression. She understood that what she had said had shaken President Lu. Perhaps what she had said now was useless, but she hoped that when that day came, President Lu would be willing to help. Because no one could guarantee that their descendants would not be of the darkness attribute. If all the things that they hated now happened to their own descendants, would they still have such hatred in their hearts? Zhao Jian walked alone on the empty road. He looked, his soulless and dispirited and haggard look. Overnight he was deserted. This feeling was a huge blow to anyone. However, facing his brother's departure, he could not say he was wrong. He constantly asked himself in his heart. But when he thought of Huang Futing, all his questions turned into annoyance and hatred. He hated Huang Futing. He felt that Huang Futing had ruined everything. If it were not for Huang Futing, he would not have ended up like this. Chapter 60-76. That damned Huang Futing. Zhao Jian cursed. What do you mean I've changed? It's all just an excuse. His dark eyes were filled with anger. He was sure that these people were just using this excuse to leave him, so that they could hug Huang Futing's thigh. They just couldn't find a reason to push all the blame onto him. He would be a fool if he really believed it. I have to pull myself together. I can't let Huang Futing see me as a joke. Zhao Jian's gaze gradually became firm. He had been muddle-headed for the past few days and couldn't figure it out. At this moment, he finally figured it out. Why did he have to push all the blame onto him? It must be because everyone had changed their minds from the moment they saw the dark sacred assembly. He was the one who was the most rude to Bewitching. The others didn't say anything. As long as he wasn't around, Bewitching might accept others. He had been thinking for everyone for such a long time, but no one treated him as a brother. What dark sacred assembly? Bewitching had already made up his mind to not accept him. What did the establishment of the dark sacred assembly have to do with him? The next moment, Zhao Jian suddenly changed his direction and walked towards the Piercing Wind City. Piercing Wind City Xiao family. Ever since the negotiation with Di Yujue was successful, Xiao Yanlong had stayed in the family and tried his best to nurture the young cultivators in the family. The most outstanding batch had already fallen in this trial. They only had a year's time. Although it was too short, they could only do their best. The Di family's land of inheritance was not simple. The three big families had opened it together, and after entering, it would definitely be a trial. If the family's disciples were too weak, they would just have to hand over the items. The Di family's strength was getting stronger and stronger, causing him to feel more and more tired. Who would have thought that Xiao Suo would be pregnant at this time? He had no choice. As the child's grandfather, he couldn't be so cruel. Xiao Suo had been staying in her house. To outsiders, she said that she was in seclusion, but in reality, she was taking care of her baby. Jun Hongcheng was also very concerned about his only grandson. From time to time, he would send people to deliver some supplements. The child in Xiao Suo's belly was his greatest hope. On this day, Xiao Yanlong heard an unbelievable piece of news, so he immediately found Jun Hongcheng and brought him over. Looking at the skinny and dark-skinned man in front of them, the faces of the two patriarchs were filled with shock. Is what you said true? Bewitching is establishing the Dark Sanctum? That's right. Even the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly has been built. It's near Emperor Cloud City, the man replied. How is this possible? Xiao Yanlong frowned. His eyes were filled with thoughts. This news was too sudden and too unbelievable. The Di family is in the limelight right now. As long as we continue to develop with this momentum, perhaps our family's status will rise again and become a transcendent aristocratic family. At this time, aren't they shooting themselves in the foot by doing such a thing? Jun Hongqing nodded slightly and said, I think this news is most likely false. Bewitching wouldn't make such a crazy decision, and Di Yujue wouldn't agree. Establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly in the upper realm was something that only a madman would do. Obviously, in their eyes, Di Yujue and Bewitching were not madmen. Chapter 60-77. Zhao Jian had spent a tremendous amount of effort to meet the two family heads. With his status, meeting the family heads was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Now that he had finally managed to meet them, the two family heads did not believe him at all. He could not help but feel anxious. Seeing Zhao Jian's anxious look, Jun Hongqing slowly narrowed his eyes. His gaze was vigilant and cold. You're of the darkness attribute as well. Establishing the dark sanctuary will only bring you benefits and no harm. You've suddenly come to tell us this at a time like this. Could it be that Bewitching has come up with some new scheme to trick us? After falling into the hands of the Di family time and time again, They had become more careful in their dealings. This 1 year was a period of stability that they had obtained with great difficulty. Nothing was more important than the child in Xiao Soa's womb. However, they also understood that the D family must be very dissatisfied with this 1 year. If it had not been for the importance of the land of heritage, they would not have agreed to it. Now that this news had suddenly spread, perhaps the D family was deliberately baiting them, so that they could take the opportunity to attack them again. Zhao Jian hurriedly waved his hand. Family heads, I have a deep grudge with D Beichen's subordinate Huang Futing. To be honest, I didn't come to inform you of this news out of good intentions. I just didn't want to see Huang Futing getting too complacent. That's why I wanted to spread this news. The scene before him had clearly exceeded Zhao Jian's expectations. He had thought that the two family heads would be very happy after hearing this news, and that he would be treated well here. He never thought that the two family heads would not believe him at all. They even thought that he was a spy. In fact, ever since Zhao Jian had awakened the darkness attribute, he had always been with people of the same attribute. He did not have enough experience in dealing with matters. Even if he had a good plan, it was not enough in front of the two old foxes. Jun Hongcheng and Xiao Yanlong looked at each other. Both of them raised their eyebrows slightly. Clearly, they would not believe Zhao Jian's words so easily. This person's sudden appearance was already very suspicious. Now that the news was so unreliable, they were almost certain that it was all fake. Men, take him away. Xiao Yanlong furrowed his brows. He did not want to waste time on such a groundless matter. If word got out, wouldn't he become a joke? Master Xiao, I'm telling the truth. Zhao Jian was completely dumbfounded. He never thought that this would be the outcome. However, Xiao Yanlong did not care about him at all. When he sent someone to take him away, he even gave the other person a look. Regardless of whether the news was true or not, this fellow could not be allowed to live. Xiao family head, Jun family head, please let me go. Neither Xiao Yanlong nor Jun Hongcheng took the initiative to speak. They just sat there quietly, countless thoughts swirling in their minds. Chapter 60-78. I've also heard about this news. Xiao Yanlong nodded slightly. In fact, he had only heard a few words about this news. Even some of his family's disciples weren't sure about it. However, since Jun Hongcheng had also heard about this, it proved that it wasn't groundless. Although this guy doesn't seem to be a good person, we can still go and inquire about this news. What do you think? Jun Hongcheng raised his eyes and looked at Xiao Yanlong. His deep eyes were full of dignified expression. Currently, both their families were in a very difficult situation. The D family and the Lin family were eyeing them covetously. Once the secret land of inheritance opened, the D family would be greatly improved. At that time, the situation of their two families could be imagined. Therefore, as long as there was a glimmer of hope to completely overthrow the D family, they couldn't give up. If the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly was true, it would inevitably cause a devastating blow to D Beichen, and even the D family. Xiao Yanlong frowned. This news is most likely false. Maybe D Beichen is waiting for us in the Emperor Cloud City. If we go, won't we fall into a trap? He still didn't believe that D Beichen would do such a bold thing. No matter who heard this news, they would think it was false. Just send 2 people to see if there is such a building or not. Don't worry too much. Jun Hongcheng waved his hand. He only felt that after experiencing these things, Xiao Yanlong's mind was getting smaller and smaller. He was actually afraid of the D family to this extent. All right. The Xiao family had already established a transmission array near the Emperor Cloud City, so it was very fast to send people to inquire about it. When the two heard that there was really a black building near the Emperor Cloud City, their expressions changed, and their eyes flashed with a thick shock. It's really there? Xiao Yanlong couldn't help but raise his voice. His eyes widened, revealing the shock in his heart. Reporting to Lord, we have indeed discovered a black building not far from here. This building is extremely grand and majestic, and it is completely black. It does indeed look like the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly. We guarded the area for a while and saw cultivators going in and out. However, we were afraid of being discovered, so we didn't dare to test them. So we didn't know what kind of attribute they had. I got it. You can leave now. Yes. After his subordinate left, Xiao Yanlong looked at Jun Hongqing. Because this matter had always been of concern to them, Jun Hongqing had also stayed in the Xiao family these few days to wait for news. Since this black building really exists, could it be that what Zhao Jian said was true? If I had known earlier, I would have kept him alive. Jun Hongqing's eyes darkened. It's fine if he's dead, but this person's motives aren't pure. If he's a spy, it'll be a disaster. Let's consider this matter carefully. Xiao Yanlong nodded. If this is true, then Bewitching is really courting death. Perhaps he's been in the limelight too much recently, so he thinks that he can succeed in everything he does. It's human nature to be arrogant. Bewitching's journey has been too smooth. Jun Hongqing narrowed his eyes. Regarding Bewitching's rise, his mood was very complicated. He couldn't understand why it was like this. Ling Sun had always been very outstanding in his heart, but when he was with Bewitching, he was always suppressed. Chapter 60-79. If that's the case, then Bewitching is really courting death. Xiao Yanlong's lips curved into a cold smile. I wonder if Diyujia knows about this? This matter happened near Diyan City. It's hard to say if Diyujia knows about it. Jun Hongqing frowned. He really couldn't judge whether this matter was done by Bewitching alone, or with the support of the D family. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Diyujia to not know about this matter, since it happened in Diyan City. But if Diyujia knew and still allowed Bewitching to do this, then he was completely crazy. I have been dealing with Diyujia for so many years. Although he has always been swift and decisive in doing things, and doesn't lack courage, I have never seen him do such a crazy thing. Xiao Yanlong shook his head. For the head of the family, the most important thing was the interests of the family. They would never agree to anything that would shake the foundation of the family. Even if Diyujia owed Bewitching and doted on him, it was impossible for him to do such a thing that would harm the interests of the family. We can consider this matter at length. If all of this is confirmed to be true, then perhaps God is helping us. Jun Hongqing's eyes gradually brightened. Now that they had been suppressed by the D family, they felt that they had no power to fight back. Every day, he worried about what the Jun family's situation would be like when the one-year deadline was up. If Bewitching really did such an incredible thing, then it would be the best opportunity for them to attack the D family. Even if they couldn't take the opportunity to completely destroy the D family, as long as they severely damaged the D family, they could make the D family disappear from the world completely. As long as there was an opportunity, it would be enough. Xiao Yanlong's face also showed a smile. There is no way out, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that this was already a dead end, but I didn't expect that there would be a way out. Send people to find out about this matter. We will spread this news. I believe that after hearing this news, the major forces will be very angry. When the time comes, they will question Bewitching one after another. If Bewitching still insists on establishing the Dark Guild, Bewitching will definitely be attacked. The D family can't sit by and do nothing when something happens to their young master. So the D family will inevitably become the target of public. If Bewitching chooses to give up under such circumstances, then his reputation will be greatly affected, his reputation, and the D family will no longer be glorious. No matter what the result was, there were only benefits and no harm to them. On this day, a piece of news quickly spread throughout the upper realm. Was heard. The D families the young will establish the Sacred Dark Guild? Really? These really is? It's absolutely true. Many people already know about this news. Because he is of the dark attribute, he doesn't want everyone to deny it. So he came up with the idea of establishing the Sacred Dark Guild. The dark attribute has always been looked down upon by the major forces. Young Master D actually dares to do this. Isn't he courting death? Who knows? Maybe he thinks that he is amazing and can succeed in anything. So he dares to challenge everyone's bottom line. Restaurants, tea houses, streets and alleys, this shocking news was spread everywhere. Chapter 60-80. Only the D family knew that Bewitching was going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. Even the Lin family was not aware of it. Therefore, when Lin Taxing and the others heard the news, they thought it was a rumor. However, they still went to the D family as soon as possible. Even if it was just a rumor, they had to refute it. Otherwise, if this rumor spread, it would be extremely detrimental to the entire D family. Murong Jing, Jiang Wenyan, and Chen Feng were also shocked when they heard the news. Murong Jing and Jiang Wenyan immediately felt that this must be a new method that the Xiao family and the Jun family came up with to deal with Bewitching. Although they knew that the Jun family and the Xiao family would not stop, such a method was still beyond their expectations. To be honest, this rumor was even richer than their imagination. Only Chen Feng was stunned for a while after hearing the news. His gaze gradually became complicated. He remembered how familiar Bewitching and Huang Futing were. If his judgment was correct, Huang Futing's group should all be of the dark attribute. Even if Bewitching and the others hid it when they communicated, he could still see that Huang Futing and the others respected Bewitching very much. It could even be said that they were obedient to him. He was also very clear about Huang Futing's identity. It was impossible for such a person to become Bewitching's subordinate without any reason. Moreover, when he was at the Radiant Temple, he clearly did not notice anyone in Huang Futing's group. It was impossible for such a dazzling Radiant Temple to not notice. Therefore, there was only one explanation for this matter, and that was that they had gone to the Dark Temple. Why did so many dark attribute cultivators respect Bewitching? He did not think much about it at first. However, after hearing the news, he suddenly understood everything. So this was the real reason. D Family Conference Hall. Dujua stood at the front of the conference hall. His handsome face was solemn. Bewitching, now that the news has spread, are you mentally prepared? Father, actually, I've already sent the invitations to the various large guilds' headquarters a few days ago. However, the meeting will take place in 3 days. Bewitching's expression was calm. His unparalleled face revealed his unswerving determination. A few days ago, he had already decided to announce this news to the world. However, before that, he had sent invitations to the various large guilds. Establishing the Dark Sanctum was a matter that belonged to guilds. As long as the guild leaders of the various large guilds were willing to acknowledge the existence of the Dark Sacred Assembly, everything would be complete. As for other people's thoughts, they could only rely on time to gradually change. I've already found the source of the news. It's the work of the Xiao and Jun families. Dujua's eyes were hazy. He knew that these two families were not easy to deal with. At this time, they would definitely ruthlessly trample on him. Lin Xian sighed faintly. This matter is truly too risky. Once it fails, the consequences would be unimaginable. He didn't expect his son and grandson to come up with such a terrible plan. But since it had come to this, all he could do was support them. His grandson was of the dark attribute. If the dark attribute could really make a name for itself, it would be a good thing. Grandfather, I'm very sorry. When Bewitching looked at Lin Xian, there was an additional trace of apology and guilt in his eyes. Speaking of which, he had stubbornly dragged the entire family down with him. Chapter 60-81. Bewitching was touched by Lin Xuan's benevolence. Even Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel touched. In the aristocratic families, it had always been the cultivators who sacrificed themselves for the family. How many families would stake everything on a single throw, just because of an individual's thoughts? Bewitching and his father didn't tell their grandfather about this matter. On one hand, they were worried that their grandfather would be greatly affected. On the other hand, they were worried that their grandfather would object. However, they didn't expect their grandfather to be so open-minded. They thought that their grandfather might be furious after finding out about this matter. He might object or even question them for not considering the family's safety. However, they didn't expect their grandfather to support them unconditionally. Grandfather, Father. Di Baichen and Di Yujua looked at Di Linxian in surprise. Their emotions were complicated. Di Linxian smiled faintly. You and your father made a decision without telling me. Do you really think that I don't know anything? Baichen is the destined young master of our family. No matter if this matter succeeds or not. No matter what the family will become in the end. Since it's decided, then go ahead and do it. Some initiatives may seem crazy to many people, but once it succeeds, the change will be very shocking. I feel that Baichen has always had this kind of courage. This might not be a bad thing. Once it succeeds, Baichen will be the president of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Isn't that great? Di Linxian smiled. He had lived to this age and understood many things. However, I still sent people to transfer the younger generation. No matter what, the Di family should keep some seedlings. Hearing Di Linxian's words, Di Baichen's eyes turned sour. Grandfather, thank you. What's there to thank for? We're a family. Di Linxian smiled. Although the family's position has been stable all these years, there hasn't been much change. The reason why we're in the limelight now is because of you and Hong Zhuang. I feel that this crazy matter might actually succeed. Everyone couldn't help but smile. Once they succeeded, the Di family would have another force, the Dark Sacred Assembly. In the future, their position would truly be unshakable. If they wanted to succeed, they would have to bear the corresponding risks. They had long understood this. Similarly, after the news of Di Baichen wanting to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly spread out, the Dark Attribute cultivators scattered all over the world seemed to have seen a ray of light. Dark Sanctum? This was a name they didn't even dare to think about, but it was also the thing they looked forward to the most in their dreams. Di Baichen's name was known to almost everyone who practiced the Dark Attribute, because he was the only young master of the Dark Attribute family. Not only that, but he also married the Saint of Light. All of this was no different from a legend in their eyes. Everyone would smile when they talked about him, because that was their beautiful vision. However, they had never thought that Di Baichen would actually want to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. After a brief moment of shock, almost everyone unanimously made the decision to go to the Emperor Cloud City. They were going to the Dark Sanctum. This was because they were all Dark Attribute cultivators. They understood that after this matter spread out, they would have to face a storm. They also understood that Di Baichen's actions were to give them a protective umbrella. It was precisely because of this that they wanted to protect Di Baichen. Chapter 6082. Cultivators from all over the Upper Realm were rushing to Emperor Cloud City. They were not the only ones. Other onlookers were also gathering in Emperor Cloud City. Now there was a long line on the teleportation array to Emperor Cloud City. We have to be prepared. Now that the news has spread, there must be a lot of cultivators coming. When the time comes, all of us will be responsible for welcoming them. Huang Futing instructed everyone. Before the young master left, he had already instructed them. All Dark Attribute cultivators were members of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Their original intention in establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly was to allow Dark Attribute cultivators to no longer be excluded, and to have a way to cultivate. Brother Huangfu, don't worry. We are all ready. Everyone spoke one after another, their eyes full of hope. Over the years, they had tried their best to gather Dark Attribute cultivators together to form a team. However, because Dark Attribute cultivators could not be seen, everything could only be done in secret. Therefore, the results were not very good. Many cultivators did not know of their existence at all, and many of these cultivators were in a more difficult situation than them. The establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly was undoubtedly a good opportunity for everyone to gather together. Through this opportunity, they could meet more cultivators of the same attribute. They were a team. Even if they might face great resistance, their will was as strong as an impregnable fortress. They would never waver. Huang Futing's gaze swept across everyone. After seeing the determination on everyone's faces, he could not help but feel gratified. The young master had already withstood a lot of pressure for them. They could not let the young master worry about these things anymore. When Lin Taxing and the others arrived and found out that the news was not a mistake, but true, Their feelings were extremely complicated. None of them thought that Beichen would do such a crazy thing. Now that everything had been publicized, it was too late for them to organize an organization. All the major forces had already known, and now there was no objection to the explanation. Instead of that, it was better to carry out this matter to the end. Lin Wenlan looked at everyone in front of him, and could not help but shake his head and sigh. Too impulsive. Why didn't you discuss such a big matter with us? Recently, he had been cultivating in seclusion. When he suddenly heard the news, he did not care about anything else, and rushed over immediately. Grandfather, this was my idea. Di Beichen couldn't help but say when he saw Lin Wenlan's anger directed at Di Yujue. What happened back then made his grandfather very dissatisfied with his father. Now that things had finally eased a little, it was inevitable that his grandfather would be angry. However, he couldn't let his father take the blame anymore.